Earth rocks! That's what we're doing, right? Earth rocks? No?
We're doing Earth rocks.
Oh, rocks. Like rocks on the ground. Well, that makes a little bit more sense. So, what is that? That would be geology, right?
Yeah.
Austin, can you tell everybody what geology means?
Geology is the study of Earth, including the material it's made of.
That's right. That's requirement 1 in your book also. What is geology? Geology is the study of the Earth and what the materials that it makes it up and their components and how they're used. So, Austin, 1B, let's think. Why is geology important to me and you?
Because with rocks, we can predict when earthquakes and volcanoes can come, and we can reduce the damage.
That's right. Geologists study the Earth, can learn how to predict earthquakes, volcanoes, minimize damage, alerting people when things are going to happen. What are some other reasons why geology is important to me and you?
The mineral, they also supply things as well. Like, we use them.
That's right. If you look around at all the things in your house, most everything you have came from the Earth. Everything did. Whether it's metal, came out of the Earth as an ore, whether it's stone, columns, whether it's anything that is mined, almost everything comes from the Earth in some way, shape, or form. It's mined from the Earth, then it's processed into what it's used for now. So somebody's got to study the Earth. Somebody's got to figure out what all these rocks are, what these minerals are, how they're used. So there you go. Learn the definition of geology and find out how geology is important to you. Next, we're going to move on to requirement 2. Alright guys, now that we know what geology is, study of the Earth, and the rocks and what a geologist does, we're going to talk a little bit about rocks. So, we've completed requirement 1. Requirement number 2 is look for different kinds of rocks and minerals while on a rock hunt with your family or den. We happened to go on a rock hunt this weekend. We went to Clifton Gorge, right? Saw a lot of neat rock formations, learned how they were formed and how the gorge was cut out into the Earth. So, when you go places, do not take rocks. Remember our leave no trace principles? Number 4, leave what you find. If other people took all the rocks, there'd be none left for everybody else to enjoy. You can find rocks in certain locations though that are okay, maybe in your yard or a creek bed. A lot of these rocks we got at different rock shops that specialize in that. So yeah, you can have a rock collection, but remember, it is also illegal to take rocks from a national park. Alright, requirement 3. Identify the rocks you saw on your rock hunt. Use the information in your handbook to determine what type of rocks. And then 3B, with a magnifying glass, take a look at your collection, determine any differences between your specimens, and share what you see with your family or den. I can see lots of differences here. You know, we got some interesting minerals. We have one right here that Austin was gold, but it's actually not gold. What is it, Austin?
Fool's gold.
Otherwise known as pyrite. This one right here is a piece of petrified wood. We have some really soft minerals right here. Some limestone rocks. Some quartz. This looks like part of it. I'm not sure what that is. But it's an interesting rock. We'll see if we can identify it. So, see if you can identify your rocks and share with what you did. There's 3 different types of rocks. There's igneous rocks, and igneous rocks are formed by magma, hot magma that cools down and forms rocks. And those will form your granites, your humuses, a lot of your porous rocks. Sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks, they go through a process basically where sand or other minerals are compressed together under maybe like an ocean, and it forms them to harden up and turn into rocks. And then that'll give you your stuff like your limestone, your sandstone, shale, conglomerate, which is basically like a conglomerate of different rocks. That's the way I look at it. Then you have the metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock is rock's been through a process like baking it. So it goes through extreme heat and great pressure in the earth to form. Your slate, your marble, gneiss, and these are all in the book. So there's not just rocks, but also the earth is made up of minerals. Like I said, almost everything in your house has come from the earth at some point or the other. So whether it's your walls come from your gypsum, your electricity runs through copper wiring that come out, your cars, your steel, the frames come from iron, which comes from the ground. Aluminum pop cans, where does that come from? Aluminum. Aluminum is an ore. There's also precious stones. Oh, excuse me. Other materials out there, let's start with that, like borax and sand, talc, quartz, precious stones like rubies, gems, diamonds, sapphires, gold. And then there's fuel, your natural gases, your petroleum to make things go, coal used for heating. So those are all different things that come from the earth. So now let's look at requirement 4, which is making a mineral test kit at home to try to determine the hardness of your minerals, and then you can record the results in your book. So 1 being the softest mineral, and that's something that easily scratches with the fingernail. And we've been through the test kit here. We had them all lined up a minute ago of which ones were which. But we don't have any 1s. We didn't have any number 2s, which is barely scratch with a fingernail. We did have a number 3. You can use a copper penny for 3 on your hardness. Something that scratches with a penny. And you probably can't see that, but I'm leaving scratches in there. But I can't get it to scratch with my fingernail. So this is only a 3 on the hardness scale. We had some 4, where Austin's got a knife blade here. And he's able to barely scratch, or scratch easily with a knife blade. Yep. There was another number 4 right there. Here's another one. And these are crushed all the time, and they can create a powder even. That's one way of recording it. Was that a 4? Or you had to push harder, or was that a 5? If it barely scratches with a knife blade, then it would be a 5. And we had some 5s right here.
Yeah, I think this is more of
a 5?
Yeah.
What about that one? So, go ahead and put your rocks through the test. See what they scratch. Always make sure to be careful. Knife safety. You can use a knife or a file. Alright.
Oh, you're right. This does make powder.
Yep. Alright. Requirement number 5. With your family or den, identify on the road map of your state some geological features in your area. So every state, doesn't matter where you live, has some kind of geological features. You can do a Google search. You might be able to find them on a map even. If you lived in Arizona, an easy one to be able to find would be the Grand Canyon. That's a huge hole in the ground. But that is a geological feature carved out through rock and stone millions of years of the river cutting away and eroding. That's one way that Earth is formed. Water just cuts through the ground, cuts through the rock, washes it away a little bit at a time, and eventually it's created this huge hole in the ground. So water causes erosion. Another kind of erosion, wind. Did you know wind causes erosion?
Yeah.
Wind eats away at rock. So look in your state. See what kind of geological features you can find. We went to Clifton Gorge this weekend, and we saw how the gorge was formed. You know, glaciers came down over the state of Ohio 10,000 years ago, 10, 20,000 years ago, and they carved the state out, carved the landscape flat. And eventually that glacier broke in half. And when the water melted, all that glacier water started cutting through the land and cut a deep gorge out through the stone. And you can see where stones have fallen off throughout the year and come down the side and created an island in the middle of the river. And it got cascading. So, see what you can find in the state. If you can, get out and visit it. See if you can identify some of the rocks out there. See what type of rocks you can find. Remember, don't take any of them though. I'm going to show you some really neat geological features that are all over this country. I like to go backpacking and hiking in different areas all the time and see new places. And here are some of my personal pictures, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit of what they are and how they were formed. So this first picture, those are called hoodoos. This was taken in Bryce Canyon. And if you notice, it looks like a rock that's standing on top of a tower. That's due to erosion that has eroded away the bottom part of the rock and only left that there. The next picture, formed by volcanoes in the mountainous area. This is a picture from Costa Rica. This picture is of the tallest mountain in the southern 48 states, Mount Whitney. You know, this is in the Sierra Nevadas where the tectonic plates pushed up one side up over the other, and it's much steeper on the east side that we're looking at because it's being pushed up over top of the plate on the other side. And the next picture is a lot closer view. This is about 3/4 of the way to the top. You can see you're up past the tree line. There's no trees. A lot of rocks, a lot of granite. The next picture, this is at the lowest elevation in North America. This is at Death Valley National Park. These are salt flats down at the bottom of the Badwater Basin. The next picture, this picture is from Yosemite. So these huge granite mountains had glaciers that carved through the valleys and actually just carved into the rock. And that's called Half Dome, where it's a sheer, straight, vertical wall of granite. And you can actually climb to the top of that. This picture here was taken above the Grand Canyon. And again, I mentioned earlier how the Colorado River has eroded years and years and years. The land has just eroded away through that. And you'll see the next picture is of Horseshoe Bend. This is a bend in the river. And you see how high above I am and how deep that is. How the water has created its own path. And that's right, shortly before you get to the Grand Canyon. The next few pictures are of just some different rocks and different things, different fossils that I saw and rock shops that I thought were really neat. And you can see some of the different fossils that they've found over the years. This picture is from Canyonlands National Park. It's a lot like the Grand Canyon, but it's a whole vast array of different canyons, and that's called the Island in the Sky District. As you can see, it looks like an island out there in the middle of nothing. This is an example of an arch from Arches National Park. There's over 2,000 arches in that park where wind has eroded away the rock and created, well, what you see behind me, a gigantic arch. This is a neat picture. I'm not actually that close to the edge, but this is the top of Angel's Landing. And you can see how the canyon, or the valley there, was formed in the river that bends around. And that's a view of me standing at the top so you can see a little bit more of what the canyon looks like. This is a picture of a slot canyon that was formed a long time ago. And flash floods, water carves out through these canyons. They can also be very dangerous to be hiking in if a storm shows up because there's no way out. So this is a picture of a cave system in New Mexico called Carlsbad Caverns. It's a gigantic underground cave. And we mentioned gypsum earlier. These are some pictures of my kids, all I had. But if you notice, the sand is pure white. It's a gypsum sand, just like what they use in drywall. And that's located in White Sands National Park. And these last few pictures are from Joshua Tree. And these rocks are pretty neat the way they're formed. They're formed underground. And then the layers of soil on top has eroded away and created gigantic boulders on top of the earth. And it's a fun place to go, and you can do a little climbing. And I wanted to point out the neat Joshua trees in the background. It's the only place in the world you'll find them. Different ways of identifying the materials. So, some other things, I don't have any in here, but I know we have some fossils also. And basically fossils are where fossils are the remains of the skeletal or an animal, a creature, an insect, a plant that died millions of years ago and got pushed down into the dirt, into the sediment, and became rock hard with the rock over time as the rock formed, like in a sandstone. So that shape of that animal, that bone, the plant, is forever preserved in that rock. And if you look in the state of Ohio, we have a state fossil. Who can tell me what it is?
Oh, trilobite.
Very good. The trilobite.
I was about to say tripod.
Yes. Oh, tripod. But a long, long time ago, the area that we live here in Ohio, this used to be a shallow sea. So you don't find a lot of dinosaur bones here in Ohio because most of that stuff, although has probably been washed away when this area was underwater. Most of the bones and remains probably washed farther away, but we find a lot of remains of different seashells and sea-bearing creatures. So, alright. So that's identifying rocks and checking out their hardness and recording your results. So, we already talked about identifying geological features in your state. Last but not least, identify some of the geological building materials used in building your home. So walk around your house, take a pad of paper and say, what is some geological building materials? How many can you see right now? I can see a whole lot. You know, just looking at the walls, it came from gypsum. The electric is all ran through with copper wiring. What else do we have? Anybody?
Isn't
Porcelain tile. You know, you may have different types of tile, whether they're glass,
isn't it
sand.
glass a type of mineral?
Yep. So there's all kinds of minerals in your house. Look around your community and see what kind of minerals have been used in building things around your community. Maybe you have marble statues, stone, granite, quartz. You know, a lot of those are really common. Concrete obviously comes from the earth also. So make a list. Go around your house, see what you can find, and then take a drive around the neighborhood, Mom and Dad. See if you can point out some different things. Like I said, almost everything you can think of came from the earth, one way, shape, or another. So, don't forget to write down your items of what you find. So, requirement 7, go on outing in one of the nearby locations you can find on your state map. So, it may be hard to do right now with the COVID, but if you can, get out, go for a walk, go somewhere where you know you're going to see a lot of rocks, like we did last weekend.
Yeah.
You know, go somewhere, look around, see if you can identify some of the rocks just by shaping. You know, is it a solid rock? Is it porous? Did the rock break off at one time? Maybe if it's a neat feature left behind from glaciers 10,000 years ago, how they, may have carved through that area. Maybe the water had carved through it, cut them. So see what you can find around you. Alright guys, Earth Rocks. This was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Did you enjoy the rocks?
Yeah.
I know you enjoyed getting out looking at rocks and scratching rocks. So.
And hopefully this is real gold. It's not.
Alright guys,